Let's continue our discussion of question type in this video. Remember from the previous video, the reason why we even want to do this is we identify the question type because that influences what skill or technique we use for that question. If you don't know what the question type is, how do you know what skill to use or what skill to emphasize? So that's kind of the entire purpose of this. In the previous video, we talked about the big idea questions. In this one, we're going to talk about factual detail questions. Factual detail questions are a special category because they really emphasize the word of Zeus. Remember what the word of Zeus is when you have a passage. All of that information in there has to be considered incontrovertibly true. Now, factual detail questions ask us just to identify and pull out some information from the passage. In fact, these kind of questions don't really require any thinking at all. As long as you understand the question, as long as you understand the passage, and as long as you can do a little bit of rephrasing and simplification, all you're doing is directly reporting information that's in the passage. So, this, out of all of the questions, is going to require the least amount of reasoning or logic. And really, at the end of the day, they're almost like vocabulary questions because you're just matching the vocabulary in the passage to the vocabulary in the correct answer. Okay, so how exactly do we recognize these types of questions? So here are two examples right here. The main way is going to be the word according to, or the phrase according to. Anytime you see the phrase according to, this is a very strong, if not an infallible indication that these are going to be factual detail questions. All right. In fact, if you look at the second one, we even have the word true in there. So there's a clue. As you can see, they're literally telling you how these questions work. It has to be something that is incontrovertibly true from the passage. So that is going to be the number one way to recognize these. I would say most factual questions use the phrase according to. In fact, you might come across questions that look like this. These are called negative factual questions. So notice we have the according to phrase right there at the beginning, but we also have this word except here at the end. So what's going on here? All of this information is true, but the strategy is a little bit different. In this case, if you look at the answer choices, 4 of these answer choices are true according to the passage. So in this case, it would be A, B, C, and E. And then answer choice D is either false according to the information of the passage or there's no evidence. So in this case, you would have to choose answer choice D. These factual questions are a little bit more annoying because you have to find 4 pieces of true information, A, B, C, and E in this case. Or if you're lucky, you can directly contradict D. But in many cases, I find myself finding A, B, C, and E and just eliminating those answers. Okay, so far we've talked about the importance of according to, because that's a really strong indication that we're dealing with a factual question. But we also have less obvious factual detail questions. I want to show you some examples. So if you take a look at this example, it says, which of the following statements about women's employment during and after the Second World War is most clearly supported by the passage? So you could make an argument that this is an inference question or it's a detail question because of the phrase most clearly. But I would say 9 times out of 10, the answer choice you choose is going to be something that's directly stated in the passage. You're going to have direct evidence about whatever you choose here. Here's another example. Select a sentence in the passage in which the author introduces a specific mode of expression, that is, et cetera, et cetera. Now, some people would argue that this is a function question, what the author is doing. But again, the answer you choose is going to be something that is a specific mode of expression that is not identified as being shared with certain European languages. So, for example, distinct or unique or something like that. So, again, in my opinion, you could almost argue that these are factual questions because really you're just looking for a word like unique or distinct or something like that. Here's another one. Select a sentence in the first or second paragraph that presents empirical results. Again, you could make the argument that this is a function question. What is the author doing with this verb here? But really, what you're going to be looking for are empirical results. Again, that's just factual. It's going to be some kind of data somewhere, etc. Okay, so here's a couple of other examples of less obvious factual. So look at this one. The passage indicates that Cressy would agree. So notice how it's presented as 100%. It's not saying like would most likely or probably. Those are more like inference questions. This one is saying super confidently what would he agree with, and it's going to be something directly from the passage. This one here, which of the following best describes the observation referred to? So reference questions are actually pretty rare on the GRE, which basically means what does observation equal? So that's what this is asking. What does observation equal? So again, you're just taking the information directly from the passage. Another factual kind of thing here. The passage presents which of the following as evidence. Notice that you're just directly identifying the evidence here. It seems very factual based, not a lot of thinking. And then finally, the author asserts that the dichotomy can lead to. Again, notice the question is not saying most likely lead to or probably lead to or anything like that. It's saying can lead to without a doubt, 100%. So one clue that you're dealing with a factual detail question is how confident the question is. If it's using language like probably or maybe, that implies it's an inference question. But if you look at the first one and the last one here, super confident. So again, it seems like these are factual detail questions. All right, do we have anything else? I think we have one more thing to talk about. So if you take a look at this one, this is a accept question. So that's not necessarily a factual question, but if you actually look at the phrasing, the giant impact hypothesis is described as answering all of these questions. So again, what you would have to do is you would have to find specific factual detail. Four of these are going to be answered, and one of them is not going to be. So very similar to that accept question before, where you have to eliminate the four true answers. But again, there's going to be no thinking here. The correct answers are going to be directly stated in the passage. So I would definitely identify these as factual detail questions. All right, that is identifying question type number 2, and we will move on to question type number 3, where we're going to talk more about the thinking questions.